Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's developer coaching webinar. My name is Tara Van Cleve, and I'm part of the database organization here at Oracle. Today, we're excited to show you how to use the new Oracle Apex AI Assistant to build chat-based search applications and explore how it integrates with other generative AI features. I'd also like to note that we are recording the webinar, and you'll receive the replay via the same email that you registered with after the event concludes. If you have any questions, we have enabled the Q&A section of the Zoom and will answer throughout the hour, as well as leave some time at the end for any remaining open questions. Today's webinar will be presented by Derek Cameron, Master Principal Cloud Architect, and Shane Jayawardene, Senior Cloud Engineer. So without further ado, Derek, over to you to take it away.
Great, thanks, Tara. So yeah, welcome everyone to our presentation on introducing the Oracle AI Assistant and how it fits into the generative AI landscape. And joining me again is Shane. Congratulations, Shane, on your wedding just recently. He just returned from his wedding to help me out with this presentation. Also in the Q&A, I've got Steve, Chip, and Pete, also on the Code Innovate team, all of us on the Code Innovate team supporting, so feel free to ask questions throughout. At the end of the presentation, Steve will be doing just a quick introduction to our Code Innovate program. All of the content that has been developed in the last few years is based off our customer interactions. And so these are all based on real life interactions with customer use cases. So let's get started. So yeah, the agenda: options to implement AI in Apex. All of the presentations I've been doing for the last couple of years, AI related, I've used Apex as the front end, but I've been using my own custom PL SQL code, and there is an AI assistant. And so I thought it would be useful to highlight the fact that it does exist, how easy it is to use, how it differs from, say, some of the custom code I've built, when you'd use one, when you'd use the other. So I have a brief introduction to the Apex AI Assistant. We will cover configuration. It's pretty straightforward. And then Shane, he lives and breathes Apex. He'll show you how to use the AI assistant to build in Apex, to actually build apps. And then I do cover kind of the front end user experience. What is the end user experience when we build AI into the actual applications themselves? I'll do a comparison. We've done lots of, like I said, custom built chat interfaces on the AI services, but now I'm gonna compare and contrast this custom approach with the plugins. And most of our presentation will be hands-on. We tend to be more focused on show exactly how it works, how it's set up, rather than doing a lot of PowerPoints. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this deck, just so you know. Not going to dwell too much on it. I know a lot of you are experienced with Apex, so I'm going to go through those quickly, but the deck will be shared. Tara will share that when the recording comes out. So again, previous webinars related to the topic AI, we've been doing it the last couple of years, Steve and I, and so I'd encourage you to go back and take a look at it. We've spent more of deep dives in these other presentations, specifically January this year and June this year. We did have a fairly comprehensive coverage. But again, we weren't using the AI assistant. We were all custom code. So go ahead and take a look at those. Good background. Now, I know many of you really know Apex, and if you don't, you should, I would say. It's the world's most popular enterprise low-grade application platform, extremely popular. We do a lot of Code Innovates use case builds using Apex. Very productive, very popular. If you haven't used it, if you're thinking about using it, it's free, comes with the database. If you're already using the database, I really don't see any reason why you wouldn't consider using it. And built into the Apex now is some AI components. It makes it a lot easier to use and to develop. It improves developer productivity. Things like, hey, I need to do some custom visualizations here and I need to use CSS. I don't know CSS. Ask the assistants. Describe your problem, let it generate the code. Java code, Java scripting. I am not a Java guy. I'm a SQL guy. Ask the question, tell it what you'd like it to do. It generates Java, PL, SQL, you name it, it can generate it. So leverage the assistant. Apex been around a long, long time. I actually started with Oracle 97. I started working with Apex in 2001. I was actually working with the Apex development team, Mike Hitchwa. First experience using it. It's 25 years old, very mature, has different components, app builder, SQL workshop. You see it, team development workflow, etc. RESTful services. It's very mature. So if whatever the use case you have, I'm confident Apex is going to be very good choice for building the applications. Also, it does allow you to build an application blueprint for building a data model. You can literally tell it, I want an application, I want it to look like this, and can you please build the data model as well? Again, and Shane will show you some of these things, some of his experience using the assistant. I think both of us we're legacy developers. We've used without AI for a long time. So we've got some insights into how that Apex can help when you'd want to do it on your own, when you'd want to use the assistant. So yeah, it comes with some plugins. Also I've also used it to fix some bugs. I handwrite all my SQL. I'm like, okay, why? What's my problem? I can literally ask the assistant and say, hey, my code for doing some kind of JSON function transformation isn't quite right, and it will point out bugs in your code. So yeah, super handy. Comes with process automation. Again, I won't dwell on this too much. You want to do a workflow with approval workflows and all of that, all part of the application platform. So where my focus tends to be more is like how the application front end looks. We have choices in our chat interfaces. We can use digital assistant. We've done that. We use Apex, but you can use other choices. But AI is now baked into Apex, and you can create a chat interface very easy, integrated with the AI services. It's just easier. I mean, that's probably the overwhelming reason I would convey to you to use that assistant is fewer lines of code baked into the UI. And for Shane, it does allow you that assistant pops up all over the place. If you want to, if you're in a code block, you can just invoke it and ask questions and have it generate that code. So yeah. It does leverage the database, leverages database AI capabilities. You want to do vector search inside the Apex app. Vector search is a native 23 or 26 AI feature. So it does leverage the database. Of course, Apex comes with the database. The database is going to be configured using credential to access our language services, our large language models. And that list is growing and growing. All the major popular models are now available. And I just almost every week, every month, I see new models pop up. So Oracle isn't in the business of building those models. They host all of the large popular models online and makes it easy for you to pick and choose which one you'd like to use. But coming with Apex is this conversational widget. My first Gen 1, which I will show you, uses a plugin and it's an HTML code block. The new chat interface is now a widget. So when I started a couple of years ago, I actually hand built this stuff. Now it's all part of a widget. So again, just really makes it so much easier. And just my final kind of plug on Apex itself. It is enterprise ready. It's not just for departmental application development builds. Of course, Oracle itself, the Oracle internal, we have tons of our own applications we use every day. 150,000 odd employees in Oracle using Apex to do all sorts of things. We use it in Oracle. It is enterprise ready. All our major customers use it to some extent. It comes with high availability, security, performance, etc. You clone your database, all your Apex environment is cloned along with it, including, of course, all the AI stuff as well. And yeah, just to recap, this is just kind of the plug that, hey, if you're not using Apex, check it out. Now, we've got a lot of customer engagements that are using AI, very, very topical. I'm going to cover this a little bit for a couple of reasons. One is I get these questions a lot over and over. And even for this webinar, I kind of ran into something that caught my attention a little bit. It was something I was already aware of, but I have an example I'll show you at the end of my part that kind of illustrates quite clearly. It's kind of one of these misnomers around things like vector search, etc. But let me just cover a couple of many of the 23 AI search features. It's a major 26 AI. People keep reminding me the 26 AI database. It really introduced a massive number of new AI capabilities. Ubiquitous search, I put this in here because it is a new search. It's not AI, just to be clear, it's not AI, but it's an index search across your entire database. And I use it in the June presentation combined with vector search, combined with document search. You can interchange and combine these techniques to improve searches across different domains, different content types, different search methodologies. Think about mixing and matching some of these to improve your search results. Natural language to SQL, that doesn't send data to the language model. It sends metadata to the language model. No data in the natural language to SQL gets sent to the language model. It's just, hey, my schema looks like this. I have a question about it. Tell me how to get and retrieve that answer, generate the SQL and execute the SQL, right? And so that is actually the technique I'm going to compare to the AI assistant. It seems the most similar. And then looking at document search, a lot of people think, oh, I'm gonna search this document with vector search. Okay, but vectors typically are effective on small chunks of text, not a whole document. And I'm going to illustrate that quite clearly at the end of this. Create a vector on a whole document, create a vector on your whole database. Good luck, it'll be useless. And so vectors encapsulate an idea. An idea is a sentence. A document often contains multiple ideas. If you have a question, that match will not happen. So just to emphasize that, vector search itself is a two-step process. Initially, within the database, do a indexed semantic search within the database. Initially, retrieve relevant information out of that with the vector search. Then send that a very tiny subset of your data to the language model. The language model reads your text chunks, interprets them, and sends your answer back. You can't send your whole database to a language model. It has to be a focused search, and vector search enables you to do that, but only when it's been chunked into small, manageable chunks that encapsulate an idea, not a whole set of ideas. And then lastly, the AI assistant, when we configure it with a RAG source, and the RAG source has the schema, it has the records, all these fields related to something. It's a query, and then it'll send that, the metadata, hey, these are the fields and these are what's in those fields to in a chat interface. The language model receives that and then sends an answer back. So to illustrate all of this, I'm going to use a schema that's pretty common in Oracle. I'm sure that many of you have seen this and worked with it, the movie stream data set. It seemed like a useful schema to use. So when we start querying this, we may have questions around the movies, the streams, the customers, the pizza shop genre, etc. Right? And so how do we do that with natural language to SQL and compare that with how do we do that with the AI assistant? So let me go into some code. So yeah, I've got some code here. Hopefully this is big enough. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. Is that clear? I think it should be good, big enough, hopefully, folks. So if we're going to use natural language to SQL, again, I'm comparing natural language to SQL to the AI assistant. We need a profile. And the profile is going to be built off of a schema. And you can see it here. I've got movies, streams, customers, pizza shops, etc. And I'm going to use the AI Grok 3 model, but you can use any of the models. Some of them work better than others, just an FYI. Grok works really well. I've done one recently and we ended up choosing that, but Madalama worked pretty well too. Cohere, not so well, so for this particular problem. And yeah, so I define the movies, the tables, views, whatever, and comments on those. And I have little to no comments on this. I don't have the join keys. I don't have anything, but the model's pretty self-evident. We've got a movie ID joining the actors to the movies, genre ID to the genre. You can see it there on the right. But I will draw your attention to one thing is pizza shops is in there. And what's the key? There is no key. There is just a location spatial data type in customers. And separately, there is a lawn and lat, not the same name, in the pizza shop's schema. And they're just numeric columns. And what you'll see at the end of the part around the natural language SQL is amazingly, it will do a spatial data transformation because it's seen the data, looked at it, and realizes to join customers. If I have a question related to pizzas, related to customer streams, movies, it's going to have to do that transformation, that calculation. The SQL is crazy complicated and it was all generated from Grok. Amazing. So let's look at the setup in Apex of the natural language SQL. Let's look at that. And let me get my zoom control out of the way, which is kind of annoying. And oops, close that. So yeah, so let's look at the setup. I'm going to go to application builder. Whoops, let me minimize that. So yeah, so I'm going to go for the setup. I'm going to go to application builder and I'm going to go into this application here. It's an ADB chat version 3. This uses natural language to SQL. If I go into shared components, the setup for this is that plugin, and the HTML plugin is here. And I've got an LLM conversation, and it uses an HTML code block. And that was all sort of custom built. It's this template here, and you're embedding fields inside this. And I fiddled with it. I've changed it. I've changed the, okay, fine. So that's there. And then the other kind of key component of this chat, and I'm not going to cover the whole setup, but kind of the key parts is the actual chat page itself is right here. And it uses my own custom PL SQL block. And you can say, well, hey, Derek, why didn't you get AI to generate this? That's a good question. And maybe had it been today, I would have gotten a V1 out of this, but this code block has been sort of changed, initially hand-coded, optimized, and changed over some period of time prior to some of the AI features. So I did hand code this, but some of this could be, probably not all of it, could be generated with the assistant. And their basic logic here is if it's tabular output, you can see there, is it a T tabular output, run the SQL and then execute it. If it's conversational output, it's all part of the chat front end, then execute the narrate function. It's just a very simple DBMS Cloud AI generate, pretty simple. And then go down here, I generate a summary, and then I insert into a table just to track the conversational history there. And then, okay, fine, Derek, what does that look like? So if I go in here, this is the application. This is the application I'm on. And I've got a welcome message up here, all custom coded. AI assistant will have the welcome message, will have instructions, all of that baked into the configuration, but all of this is baked into my page, buried in the page somewhere, right? So now let's go to the code and I'll go down here and I'll ask some questions. What movies are Tom Hanks in? You go Gee, Derek, you've asked that question a lot over the last little while. Are you asking it yet again? I'm going to say yes, I am, because I'm just level setting everyone on how this works. By the way, I've also set my language profile, my natural language SQL profile in the background in the upper right here. I've got several languages, so I'm actually setting them explicitly up in the UI on the right. And of course, because I'm doing this to a presentation to lots of people, it's going to go slower. So anyway, here's the answer. Okay, and I can get the SQL by hitting explain, and I can turn this result into a report that allows you to download the results. Now, show a count of movies streamed by year. Okay, yeah, I know. That's fairly straightforward. Show customer, which customer streamed the most movies. We'll just ask that. And I'm going to change it to conversational. So now you've got a slightly different response experience. It can actually explain the result a little bit. And when we get that back, in fact, I will just switch over to here. This is the one that intrigued me a lot. How many pizza shops are within a 50-mile radius of customers that streamed movies in the US? And if we look at our data model here, what do I need to query? I need to go from movies because I need to know I need to know movies and movie streams and customers and their location and pizza shops. So, yeah, let's take a look at that. And the answer is 164 movies. And what does a sequel look like? This is the sequel that was used to generate and count those 104. This is straight copied from the explain button. It takes 20, 30 seconds to generate this and present it. So I've got it copied for you, but there it is there. And I think that's pretty crazy complicated. It'd take me a few minutes or more to figure out the code on this one. But it just looked at my column names and it figured out, oh, I need to join through an SDO geom distance function in order to get the customers within a 50-mile radius. So yeah, very impressive. There's the detailed explanation, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, there's kind of what I wanted to convey on the natural language to SQL. Now, let's switch gears here and let's go to the AI assistant and the AI assistant setup. Go back to here. Oops. Yeah, so go back to here. I'm going to go back to App Builder. I'm going to go to this application now. But before I go to AI application, some of the AI configuration is done at the workspace utility level. So first step, you need a web credential. The web credential is giving the database the permissions to go to use AI services, which are external to the database. And I have credentials for OCI generative service. I have my credentials. You can see I have lots of other credentials in here. IDCS credential, Cohere, OpenAI. I use a lot of these different services. I just have them in the web credential setup. Step two, go to generative AI. In generative AI, I create a new service and I'm going to give it an ID, a static ID. I'm going to use my compartment. I'm going to use Chicago. By the way, there are some language models, Cohere only, or Grok, I should say, Grok only, that are in Ashburn now. And as time goes by, I expect others will. But if you're in Chicago, all of the models are supported in Chicago. So I'm going to Chicago. I'm using the latest Cohere model, and I'm also using the credentials that I created in the previous step. Pretty simple. And once you do this, you're pretty much ready to go with the AI assistant. But if I'm going to use it in an application, let me go back to App Builder. The other steps that we need to do to enable it in a chat interface involve shared component. And the shared component involves an AI configuration. And I created this. It's an AI assistant. I called it AI assistant. I know that's a bit of a misnomer because the feature is called AI assistant. You can call it anything you want. And when you have an AI assistant, you have a system prompt. Remember, I did all that prompting, all of that stuff buried in Pages. You created a configuration. It does make it pretty darn simple. It tells you, here's my instructions, and here's some instructions to the language model. This is the preamble. Remember, when we do preambles in language models, you code instructions to the language model. That's what this does. And if we scroll down a little bit, we also have the welcome message. Again, I put that in the page. That's captured in this configuration. And then the last thing I have is the rag source. And I am going to actually start with this rag source here. It is selecting all the columns from the movie table. It's a query. It can be anything you want, but it's the rag source. It's the source of what's getting sent to the language model. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to switch it out and I'm going to go in here, paste that. You'll notice it does have a predicate here because I can't send the whole table to the language model. It's too big. It has to be focused. The focus has to be on a particular record. So I'm going to apply the changes here, which is quite different from natural language to SQL, right? Quite different from that. And then if I go to the search movies. So yeah, so I have this movie application here. And what I want to do is I want to build a chat interface that allow you to ask anything you want about the movie. And I implement that through a button. I use the chat widget and I call the services. So yeah, I'm going to go in here and what is the production movie crew? Well, the first thing I want to say is the production movie crew in many fields in this is JSON. It's JSON, it's not just text. But we're going to ask that question and it is going to look and say, oh, they want to know, I've got all the information. I've got all the information about the movie, but they're asking about the movie crew, and I've sent it all the fields and the values for the fields. It's go, oh, the crew is in this column and it's JSON, but he wants to see it obviously listed out. And I tell it, hey, translate this, and here you get the answer. So it's done it nicely, easy, super easy. Let's go back in here. If we look at select star from movies, I'll skip that. It basically shows you that I'll execute that. Most of the columns are JSON. Here it is here. There it is there. You see it on the right there. The crew is JSON. Not only the crew, the studio's JSON. A lot of the fields and a lot of the data in here are JSON. So yeah, all gets translated. What were the award nominations? Nominations are also in a JSON. Lots of awards for Apollo 13 apparently. So yeah, and so it's going to go find the data. So now I'm asking about nominations, not asking about crew. I'm sent again all the fields, and here they are here, right? There they are there. Wow, 28 nominations. But I am sending all this data, the whole record every time, the whole record. And so if you go in here, you can actually get and query the Apex web server log and get the length of the text string that gets sent to the language model. So how do we optimize this? Now, first of all, I would not be so concerned. I would not be too concerned about the number of tokens sent. The costs for OCI language services are very low. We did a whole code innovate with a customer recently. They wanted to know what did it cost. It was $7 of consumption for a whole code innovate for an entire week of using it with constant prompting. So, but if you are a high volume public site, well, it's going to add up. So the one way to optimize this is, hey, I'm going to vectorize I'm going to vectorize the select star for movie vectors. And I had to create this, just to be clear, I did have to do some data prep. I created vectors on the name of the column and on the text values for that. So I built this. There's the text chunks. I did that. And I created vectors. And so if you right click here on header, you'll see that I've got vector chunks. So now if I want to ask a question about movie nominations or the cost of admission or the movie released, same question, but instead of sending the language model the entire record, I'm going to do a similarity question. The, the, the user asked about movie release date, and they didn't phrase it exactly the same, but I understand now with semantic search that what they're asking is really the year the movie was released or the cost or the production crew. I'm going to do a vector search, find the field, and then only send that. So to do that, we'll actually do that vector search right here. There it is there. And I'll replace my rag source now. So we'll go in here. I'm going to go into movie information. I'm going to go into my rag source and paste. I'm going to update changes. And I'm going to go back to my question. And the question is, what were the award nominations? It was the same question. It's now doing a vector search. And just do this because, and let's ask the same question. And so now we're doing much more of an optimized search. We're only sending very specific, relevant data to answer that particular question, leveraging database vector search, right? So there it is there. The answer is slightly different because I'm in conversational format. But if we go back here, and I won't run this, but the Apex web service log now drops less than 50%, depending on the one. I could have asked for like just the cost of admission, and it would have gone down from 27, 29 down to like, I don't know, 400 or 500. But the point is that it's only being now sending exactly the information needed to answer that question. So now the very last thing I kind of want to leave you with, because I'm talking about vector search, and that is vector search, as I asserted earlier on in this presentation, works effectively on small text chunks. Well, how small? Well, for Spider-Man, this is the summary of the movie. If I ask, please summarize this movie, what do you think is going to come back? You might think, well, of course it says movie summary. Movie summary is going to come back. No, actually, this is the very last match in a vector search. Why? Well, you ask for a summary, and it's going to vectorize the question, summarize this movie, and it's going to compare it to the meaning of this entire code block, which includes the Columbia Pictures, it's a sequel, and the road trip, discussions for a sequel, blah, 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 blah. This vector chunk is very different from the vector chunk on summarize this movie. In fact, summarize this movie, it will return every single field before it returns this one. So you need to chunk this. So you say, well, how do we get around that? You need to chunk these text blocks into more. And so I rewrote it. I literally hand rewrote it. This one here is 332 words. I rewrote it. And I just read it and I thought, okay, this movie's about American superhero with a character called Parker, blah, blah, blah. It's one sentence. And so now compare the vector search across every field, including this summary and my rewritten summary. And what does that look like in terms of vector distance? Remember, we're doing a vector distance search. The meaning of my question, which is this, with the two text chunks and every other field, what does vector search return? And here it is here. This is kind of, to me, a, a black and white example of a distance function sorted in order of ascending relevance. And at the very top is the one I hand rewrote. And again, it could have been chunked and I would have gotten one of the chunks. And the match was the movie released, the main subject, the runtime. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm telling it it's a summary in the last sentence, but there's so much more in there. That vector search, this is a semantic comparison of my question with these text chunks, and you can see big check chunks. So I learned very, very early on is that optimizing the size of your chunks makes a huge difference. So at this point, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop sharing, and Shane's going to talk about how you can use AI in the AI assistant to actually build these apps. Over to you, Shane.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. So to get started with the AI assistant, we are able to come to our SQL workshop here. So this is just a SQL worksheet. Now, if you come over here and you notice that you don't have the AI assistant button, like you can see here, remember you have to go and set this up on a workspace basis. So you may have set it up in other workspaces before, but it's not present on this workspace here. And to do that, you'll follow the steps that Derek showed earlier through the utilities in the workspace. I have configured it, so if I just refresh my screen, I will get the Apex Assistant to show up over here. And so we've always had the query builder where you can use a drag and drop to build queries. But now, of course, we have AI, which speeds things up even more. To get started, we can ask it to build a simple query based on these two tables, the customers and orders table. And we'll be specific that we want to include all the orders, all the customers, even if they haven't placed an order. So if we validate the query, we can see the data is returned back here. Now, this is correct, but what if I want to understand more on why a left join was used? I can switch also over to the general assistance. I can highlight this and use it as a selection and then ask my question so that it already has the context of the previous conversation. And then I can be specific that I need to understand why we're using a left join here. And it's going to tell me that it's because we want our customers, regardless if they've placed an order or not. And so let's flip back over to the query builder one more time. We'll again select this and use it as a selection. And let's see if we can modify this query such that we can include a third table, right? So now we have customers and orders, but I also want to include my order items. So again, we get a brand new query. We can insert that directly here and execute it. And now we have two left joins with all of our data shown here. Of course, it's only displaying the first 10 right now, but if I just change that and do this again, you get all the data back here. So far, so good. But now let's take it one step further even, and let's modify this query such that we only include the top 10 customers. And I thought this would be a good example because you need to put a limit on the number of customers, but not on the entire SQL query, right? So this fetch 10 rows only needs to be included in the subquery and not here at the end, because otherwise you'd be getting 10 rows total, when in reality, we wanted 10 customers and no limit on the amount of rows. So you can see it was very successful there on bringing back all the data. And this can even be validated to see if this really is 10 customers again by just telling Apex that I want to use this selection and I'm going to use the selection as a subquery and I want to write an outer query that's going to count the total number of customers that were returned in this query. And so it's going to do that as well, and we can execute that. And sure enough, we get our top 10 customers who have placed the largest number of orders. So that's great. Now let's check out some other things. Like if we want to use the general assistance instead, and I ask it to write a query that joins my customers and my orders. So now I'm on general assistance. It's going to go through and it's going to join those two tables. And if I insert that and run it, I get an error. They are saying that I don't have a table called orders and I don't have a table called customers. And the important thing to remember here is that general assistance doesn't have the context of your schema the same way that the query builder does. So when we ran this exact question as our first question in the query builder, we got a response. But now it's going to give a response based on a default dummy customer schema, which is why the error is there. So how do I do something more than query building, but I also want to include the context of my schema? So there's probably many ways to do this. One way I've done in the past is I've asked the general assistants, I provided the 2 tables or 3 tables, or wherever it might be, to actually generate a PL SQL block that will return the metadata for these 2 tables that then I can pass back in as context. So we'll give it just a second here to come up with the PL SQL block. And if we insert this block, we can execute this code. Column name ambiguously defined, looks like there's an error. It's probably just a missing character. Why don't I do this instead? I will just copy the one that it generated earlier just to be sure. And I'll just paste that in here. So this code was generated from that same prompt. Of course, it's AI. So decided to fumble a little bit here, but I can now take that metadata that it's generated. I'll clear this history, right? Clearing conversation history. And I will ask the AI assistant to review the following table metadata. And I'll just copy and paste all this into there so that it starts to understand what I'm asking in my following questions. And so once it has a chance to review, it now has context of your schema, or specifically in this case, those 2 tables that I'm going to be asking a follow-up question to. And now I can do something more than just query building, right? In this case, I'm just going to ask it to generate 2 simple functions. The first is going to take, or they're both going to take customer ID as input, and one's going to return the total number of orders that customer's placed, and the other one is going to return the total value of all those orders. So if I just take that first function, you can see here it's able to generate 2 code blocks simultaneously. If I take that first function and run it, and then I take the second function and insert that again, and I'll run that one. And we can even test these 2 functions with this statement right here. So if I just say I want to run this function called get customer order totals, we can see that this specific customer 101, has ordered a total of 19,000 or 190,000. And if I get the other function, which is the customer order count instead, that's 4 orders for that 190,000 figure. So we validated that both these functions work. They are specific to our schema now because we did place the context. And so far this looks good, but now I want to create an actual package for these 2 functions so that I can log them and make them more reusable to all my developers. I do know that I'm going to need another function later, as well as another dummy procedure. So I can even specify that when you're creating the package, create the package body, create the package definition, and then when you create the package body, you can go ahead and include dummy functions as well that then can be used as just placeholders for later. And you can see here, all this is validating. So far, I've created the functions, I've created a package as well as the dummy package. So this is great. Again, it's PL SQL. Just make sure that when you switch to general assistance, you give the context of your schema or your question before you ask your question. Otherwise, it's just working off of a default schema. And there's many ways to do that. The way I showed today, or you can just specify which tables and columns you're going to ask questions about. Now, what if we want to use the AI assistant for more than just PL SQL or SQL? We can head over to an app, for example, we can go over to the sample charts app that I've installed from the gallery. And here on page 50, or P50 set value, and a basic interactive grid that's going off of that same schema, the orders table. So if I run this example, you can see here my grid and my text box. One question that comes up quite often in Code Innovate is I want to use the interactive grid, but I want to be able to put a button into this toolbar right here next to the actions icon. As you may know, in an interactive report, it's fairly easy. There's a default slot for that button. You can drag and drop it into the slot and it'll appear near the create button. But an interactive grid is built a little differently on the widgets. And so you need to use the initialization, the JavaScript initialization function for this. And so that's located over here under attributes. And so when I come over here, I see the function. And if I go to help, it has an example, but I don't really know what I need to type here. So there's the Apex AI Assistant. I do know that I found a blog a while back that kind of talks about this. So I can even just copy the sample code from a blog and just test it out here. And once the page loads, sure enough, I get a filter button that opens up the filters. But that's not my use case. That's just what the blog talked about. What I really wanted was two different buttons, one that will send an alert to the page and one that will set the value of this page item to some arbitrary number. I don't know enough about JavaScript to really understand how I can modify this in order to create two buttons as well as tie some actions to it. So again, I can use the Apex Assistant to help me out with this. So I paste in that exact same code block that you see right here on the left, just as an example. And then I just give some context that says, I want to create two custom buttons on this page. And I want to be specific about what those buttons do, right? The first is going to set the value equal to 5. And the second is going to send an alert to the page, and that the AI assistant can use the example I pasted directly from the blog as an example. And so it's going to go through, use the context it has plus the context I provided, and it's going to try to generate some JavaScript code. So I insert this new JavaScript code. It's much longer. Looks like I do have two buttons as well as two actions. We can check this out. And there are two buttons as well. So if I say show alert and set value, you can see they work. You can go in here and you can add icons as well. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over that part. And what I wanted to show you is that it is context aware, right? So this was JavaScript. Now, what if I want to color this button to red, for example, or blue? Well, I kind of understand that I need to get some sort of ID from here, but I don't actually see an ID. I do, however, see this data action that I may be able to use. Now, I don't know how to use CSS enough to color a button based on the data action. But again, I can just paste that data action in there, and I can just ask the AI assistant to use this data action to color my button blue. And so we can paste that in there. And I'll be specific that I have a button. This is the data action for that button. And here's what I would like to have. So here's the correct syntax. And if I run the page, close this out, sure enough, I get a blue button. And this can be extended for HTML, more complex CSS and JavaScript. But I just wanted to cover the basics today. Two more quick things I want to talk about, which was the modeling of, or creating a data model through AI. So here you have the ability to create an entire data model based on some prompt. So if I use my example here is that I want to create a data model based on a financial application that I'm building to track spending and an individual's financial goals. I can be specific that I want like all my tables to be prefixed with some character, and I want all my columns to be of a certain length if their data type is a varchar. And sure enough, it created the outline. And if I just say review SQL, I get the data model right here. And I can go ahead and actually just run this, give it a quick name and run the script. And so from a simple prompt, I was able to create those 4 tables, the indexes, and all that fun stuff. Now I can use this to build an application as well. If I go to the app builder and I go to create, and I say create app based on generative AI, the second time I'll just use this default prompt here, which is to build a app based on some HR data. I find that this feature is a bit hit or miss just based on your model. So if you're having trouble, maybe switching to another model or rephrasing your questions, but it allows you to essentially jumpstart building your application. So you can see there it created some pages and reports as well as some features. And you can be more specific that if you want to include, let's say, I need to include application access control feature, you can go back and forth a couple times with this until it gets you the outline that you're looking for. And once you've come to the point of where you're satisfied, which with the outline is looking like, so you can see there added access control, you can say create application. And so this doesn't actually create the application instantly. Rather, it creates the blueprint for your application. So these are the pages it decided. These are the features. And so you can make final tweaks here and change anything you need to before you actually create your application. So those are some of the ways that you can use the Apex AI Assistant to kind of speed up your development inside of your workspace. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Steve, who's going to talk a little bit about the Code Invite program.
Great. Thank you, Shane and Derek. And cover a program that we offer called the Oracle Developer Experience or Virtual Code Innovate. So you may ask yourself, wow, this is a lot of exciting stuff here in Apex. How do I go about learning it or exploring it or trying it out for the first time or baking it into my existing Apex apps? Well, we have a program called Virtual Code Innovate, which works alongside with your team to explore these exciting offerings here in Oracle Apex. So you'll ask yourself, what is a Virtual Code Innovate? It's a hands-on introduction to OCI cloud services, or it's an opportunity for you to work with our engineers over a course of a week. Like I said, the time frame is 1 week. It's Monday through Friday, and it's 4 hours a day. Um, it's very hands-on. Our engineers are working with your engineers within Zoom breakout rooms to help you build out a solution. We found that working in this environment, it facilitates rapid knowledge sharing. You get to ask questions real time live as you're building it out. Our engineers help you build out, answer questions, and so forth. The key is that we leverage your use cases. We don't bring canned use cases to you and say, "Hey, try this out." We ask you, "Well, what do you want? What do you want to work on? What are you using? What do you want to try?" And we go from there. Um, you may ask yourself if there's any cost associated with that. The answer is there's no cost for our time. There are costs associated with the use of the tenancy that you're working in, your consumption of your tenancy. Leading up to the Code Innovate, if you decide to do a Code Innovate with us, we do what's called pre-event slash structured learnings. And the goal here is to introduce you to the services or the features that you're going to be working with during the event itself. We do that in the form of selected demonstrations or walkthroughs. We also want to make sure leading up to the event that you have everything provisioned and set up in your tenancy. We don't want to be on day one of the build and have to spin up a service and make sure everyone has access to it. We want to get that stuff out of the way pre-event. And again, like I said, the goal is to make sure that you've seen the services, everything's set up, and you have a baseline awareness available to you. So the Code Innovate experience looks like this. Um, we go through the program with you. We do a little bit more in-depth dive or pitch of what the Code Innovate program is. And then one of the first questions you'll ask, or you'll hear us say a lot is, well, what use cases do you want to work on? Give us a list of use cases. Once the use cases are defined, then we decide on which ones work well in the Code Innovate setting. And then during the event itself, we work in Zoom live 4 hours a day for 5 days straight, building out your use case. And at the end of that 20-hour sprint or 20-hour time commitment in that week, you would have built a first pass prototype or a minimum viable product. From a timeline perspective, this is what it looks like. Once an event date is confirmed, we usually, and you'll see this in the next slide, there are some requirements, usually a 3-week minimum lead time, sometimes more depending on the resources availability. But once the event date is confirmed and use cases are provided and agreed upon, then throughout that 3-week lead time, we do use case discussions, resource allocations. This is where we do our tendency config and structured learnings. Uh, and so we don't go away in that 3 week. We actually continue to engage with you and prepare for the actual event itself, which is the last block on this slide. Uh, and then lastly, we do have some minimum requirements that we ask when we schedule a code innovate or work with the customer on a code innovate. Again, use cases, we ask that you provide the use cases. Um, we ask for a 20-hour commitment in the form of 4 hours a day for 5 days straight within a singular week. We ask for four or more developers so that we have a team. It could be more than four, but we ask for a minimum of four. And then there is a lead time, as I said. That lead time helps us make sure we have the right resources and everything is in place for the event itself. If you're interested in the Code Innovate, we have the Code Innovate email address here at the bottom of this slide. And I believe when we send out the context or the information from this webinar, we'll also include that information in the post-webinar materials. So thank you for the time, and I'll turn it back over to Tara.
I am going to quickly wrap up here. If you enjoyed today's session, we'd like to invite you to attend our upcoming webinars in the series, which you can find at oracle.com/developer/events. And we'd also love to hear your feedback on today's session and on what topics you'd like for us to cover in the future. So as you leave the Zoom room, a short survey is going to pop up to share that feedback with us. So, with that, I'd like to thank you all for spending your time with us today. Have a great day, and we hope to see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody.